I feel very guilty. Huh?
So,
I think we should start, sir.
Yes, we welcome Professor Azeem Ali, Dr. Azeem Ali, to deliver his lecture, and I request, as I have already requested, Professor Pundhir sir to preside over the lecture, and he is certainly, I should say, a very honorable historian of medieval Indian history from a place which is well known in India for a very deep and scholarly study of the medieval Indian history. And I welcome all the honorable audience, my dear students and learned teachers who have joined, and I request everybody to come up and to present the next lecture, that is in the series of lectures which we have given from 6th century BC onwards, the heritage poems of India. Sir, Dr. Azeem Ali sir, please start.
Sure. Yes. Hi. Hello everyone. So today I'm going to talk about the coinage of late Mughal India, so from the death of Aurangzeb to Bahadur Shah Zafar, as well as the successor states of the Mughal Empire that emerged as it grew weak. So just a short recap. So the Mughal Empire was established in 1526 and saw the introduction of Timrid style Sharukis, which were silver coins such as these, and the Mughal interregnum after the exile of Humayun under Sher Shah Suri, as Professor Pandey mentioned, saw the development of the rupee, which was inherited by the Mughals. And from Humayun's restoration onwards, then you had kind of the redevelopment of Mughal coinage, which increased, which reached kind of peak in artistry under Jahangir. And later on, under his successors, the wealth of the Mughals grew during the reigns of Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb, and it helped to kind of fuel their wars to conquer the Deccan. But unfortunately, this led to kind of imperial overstretch, and the Mughal Empire became too big to rule. And by Aurangzeb's death in 1707, the Mughals stood at kind of precipice. And now, so we're going to look at how the Mughal Empire went from this, so covering most of India, to this. So in the space of about 50 years, it shrunk dramatically. The first one was the Mughals. So we left the Mughals with at the death of Aurangzeb in 1707. He was 88 years old. And after he died, there was a brief succession struggle between Aurangzeb's sons, Muazzam, Azam, and Kambaksh. And Muazzam emerged victorious and acceded to the Mughal throne in 1707 as Bahadur Shah I, also known as Shah Alam I. But as soon as he came to power, there was a growing political crisis in his court as the Turkish and Iranian nobility resented the rise of the Indian nobility. And there was unrest that continued from the reign of Aurangzeb, with the Jats still kind of rebelling near Agra, so it made it quite dangerous around there. And the Rajputs also saw an opportunity to regain independence in Rajasthan. But the most serious threat was the Marathas, who had grown in strength despite the efforts of Aurangzeb. So they were growing as a threat to the Mughal Empire. And Bahadur Shah I tried to undo the religious policy of his father, but unfortunately he didn't live long enough to see this reach fruition, and he died on the 18th of February 1712 in Lahore after a brief reign of just 4 years. And Bahadur Shah I's death was followed by another war of succession. So this is a kind of renewing kind of issue that he had. There was constant disputes over the succession to the Mughal throne, and there was another such kind of war of succession. And one of the contenders was Prince Azeem Ushan, whose power base was in Bengal, and he had a large army and treasury to match his claim to the throne. But after 3 months, Jahandar Shah emerged, and he defeated his rival brothers and took power on 29th of March, 1723. And Jahandar's reign saw imperial institutions being weakened, and the nobility, so the nobles who supported his brothers against him, were punished. But at the same time, he began relinquishing power to his ministers and delegate power to Wazir, for example. And then his ministers used this opportunity to kind of plot against him. And his policies that he instituted were very unpopular, and this led to opposition to his rule. And his nephew, Farrukhsiyar, raised an army in Bengal. And Farrukhsiyar crowned himself Mughal emperor in Patna, in Bihar, and gained the support of the governors of Bihar and Allahabad, who were both Baha Sayyids, Hussain Ali Khan and Abd Allah Khan. And these Baha Sayyid brothers, also known infamously as the Sayyid brothers, would become very infamous and during this period of Mughal history. And Farrukhsiyar, with the support of the Sayyid brothers, defeated Jahandar Shah, and he had him executed. And thus Jahandar Shah's reign came to an end, and Farrukhsiyar took power. And Farrukhsiyar was formally enthroned on the Mughal throne on the 10th of January 1713, and he rewarded the Sayyid brothers with political appointments. Abdullah Khan was made Wazir, and Hussain Ali Khan was made Mir Bakshi, or Chief Paymaster. And this gave a lot of power to the Sayyid brothers, who went on to kind of just kill all the nobles who would oppose Farrukhsiyar's succession. And this led to kind of plotting in the Mughal court. So Farrukhsiyar's advisors saw the danger of the Sayyid brothers, so they wanted to undermine his relationship with them, because they saw that they were a real threat to the stability of the Mughal Empire. And then while this was all going on at Mughal court, the Sikhs started rebelling in Punjab, and the Rajputs, Jats, and Marathas continued to oppose Mughal rule. So there was all these unrest kind of festering across the Mughal Empire, kind of bubbling away, eating away at the foundation of Mughal rule. And then there was also famine, and this political unrest I just described also saw Mughal revenue decline. And Farrukhsiyar did try to bring the Sayyid brothers under control, but the Sayyid brothers were able to note this, and they overthrew him. And then they installed a series of puppet rulers, including Rafi Darjat, Shah Jahan II, and then finally Muhammad Shah, 1719. So in 1719, you had a series of rulers come and go, but it was Muhammad Shah who would overthrow the Sayyid brothers. But Muhammad Shah, he's also known as Rangila, or colourful. He acceded to the Mughal throne in September 1719. He was the grandson of Bahadur Shah I, through his son Jahan Shah. And initially he was a puppet of the Sayyid brothers, but this was the change. And the Iranian and Turkish nobility had long resented the influence of the Sayyid brothers and helped Muhammad Shah overthrow them. But unfortunately, after restoring Mughal power at the court, Muhammad Shah famously devoted himself to music and the harem, hence the name that I mentioned, Rangila. And he kind of delegated government affairs and left them to his vizier, Kamil al-Din. And this led to disaster, as a new threat was looming from the west, which was Nadir Shah of Shah. And Nadir Shah was a king of Iran at the time, and this is a portrait of him in 1740 AD. So just going to go over Nadir Shah very briefly. So Nadir Shah had seized power in 1736 after having restored the power of Iran after the collapse of the Safavid dynasty in 1722. The Safavids had been defeated by the Pateki Afghans in Ghaznabad in 1722, and this had left Iran quite weak. And Iran lost territories to the Russian Empire in the northwest and Ottoman Empire in the west. And Nadir Shah was able to overthrow the Pateki Afghans and restore Iran's position in the west after waging war against the Ottomans. And the treaties of Rasht and Ganjab restored Iranian territories that had been lost to the Russians. And now, with these threats kind of pacified for the time being, Nadir Shah turned east to the Mughal Empire, where there was a lot of wealth. Despite the political instability, there was still a lot of wealth there. He saw ripe for plundering. And this is the Afsharid Empire at its peak, so you can see it stretched from the Caucasus region, so Dagestan and Russia, briefly down into Iraq, and then even parts of what is now UAE and Qatar and Oman, and east right into India, and then north into Central Asia. Quite a vast empire. So after proclaiming himself Shah in 1736, Nadir Shah conquered Kandahar in 1737. And using the pretext of Muhammad Shah's failure to hold Afghans fleeing the Persians, Nadir Shah declared war on the Mughals. Nadir Shah invaded India and defeated the Mughals at the Battle of Karnal in Haryana in 1739. And his victory was soon followed by the Persian sacking of Delhi. An enormous amount of loot was carried off to Iran. It is said that Nadir Shah halted taxes in Iran for 3 years because the amount of wealth he took was so enormous. So people normally say that Britain also took a lot of loot, but Nadir Shah's kind of started that trend where he took an enormous amount of jewels from the Mughal treasury in Delhi, or Shah Jahanabad as it was known. And the Mughal peacock throne, which used to be kept in the Lal Qila, that was destroyed, and a lot of the Mughal jewels were taken, including the Darya-e-Noor, which is still in Iran, and obviously more famously the Kohinoor, which was taken to Iran initially. And a lot of the jewels taken from India remain in Iran to this day. So this gives a kind of context of how much devastation it was. And British newspapers at the time informed the British public and the government in Britain at the time of this invasion, and this kind of indicated that the Mughal Empire was weakened and there was kind of opportunity there for conquest. And after returning to India, Nadir Shah would spend the rest of his life campaigning in Central Asia, Oman, and the Caucasus until he was assassinated by his bodyguard in 1747. And while Nadir Shah was in India, he struck his own form of Mughal silver rupees. And these coins were minted in his name in regions such as Punjab. One such coin includes inscriptions in Persian on the obverse and reverse. The obverse reads, Has Sultan ba Salatin-e Jahan, Shahi-Shah Nadir Sahib Kiran, which means, he is the king over all the kings of the world, the king of kings, Nadir, lord of the fortunate conjunction. And the use of Sahib Kiran harken back to the days of Amir Timur, the founder of the Timurid dynasty, of which the Mughals were descended from. And Nadir Shah was an admirer of Amir Timur and his conquests and empire. And the reverse of this coin has the following inscription, which provides a mint. Khaladu Allahu Mulkahu Baka, which means, may God preserve his kingdom, Baka, which is the mint town, which is now in Sargodha in Punjab. And this is the rupee that was struck by Nadir Shah. So you can see it's very similar to Mughal rupees that were struck at the time. And it gives kind of the regnal year, 1159 here. And now we go back to Muhammad Shah. So we left him at the Battle of Karnal. So after Nadir Shah left, Muhammad Shah kind of continued to rule. And there was another invasion of India at the time by the Afghan king, Ahmad Shah Durrani, who served Nadir Shah. And his series of invasions started in early 1748. But by April 1748, Muhammad Shah died, and his death was actually kept secret, perhaps to avoid any succession struggle, until his son Ahmad Shah Bahadur took power on 15th of April 1748. So now we're going to talk about Ahmad Shah Durrani, the founder of the Durrani Empire. This is him. He ruled from 1747 to 1772 AD. And he's considered the founder of Afghanistan, which is obviously in the news a lot today. So we look at Ahmad Shah Durrani. So after the death of Nadir Shah in 1748, a loyal bodyguard of his, Ahmad Shah Abdali, took power. He seized Nadir Shah's Indian loot, including the Kohinoor, and crowned himself Ahmad Shah Durrani in Kandahar in 1748. And he's called, even today, Ahmad Shah Baba, which means father, by Pathans of Afghanistan, and he's held in great reverence. And he's considered the founder of Afghanistan. In India, he's remembered for the series of raids that he launched during the kind of first 12 years of his reign after the 1760s, which considerably weakened the Mughal Empire. And he continued, and he took away a lot of loot, just like Nadir Shah had done. And he also conquered Kashmir and Punjab from the Mughals. And he also checked Maratha power, the Battle of Panipat in 1761. And this left a power vacuum in India for the British East India Company to exploit. And Ahmad Shah Durrani would die in 1772 after a long military career and a series of raids in India. And this is his empire at its peak. So you can see it stretched from Delhi, almost kind of touching Delhi here, right up, encompassing all of Afghanistan and Punjab, down into Balochistan, and as well as parts of Iran, including Mashhad, northeast Iran. And you can see the summer capital is Kabul and the winter capital is Peshawar. And Ahmad Shah Durrani also struck silver coinage, and these were also kind of Indian styles, just as Nader Shah had used. And one of the first Indian mints where he ordered coinage to be struck was in Peshawar. And these rupees have Persian on the obverse and reverse. The obverse says, Hukum shod az Khadir e bechon ba Ahmad Basho Sikhe Zambasim Vazo as Auj Mahi Kaba Ma Ahad. And this means the order came from the peerless powerful one to Emperor Ahmad to strike coins on gold and silver from the accession of the fish to the moon, rising from the sea to sky, the first regnal year, which is the meaning of Ahad. The reverse has the following inscription, Zab Peshawar Sanat, and then Yek Julus Memanat Manus, which means struck in Peshawar in year 1, which is the first regnal year, 1748. And this is the rupee, or Ahmad Shah Durrani, and this is it in person. Showing in person. So this is what it looks like. Very nice, iridescent toning on this. And this was struck in Peshawar Mint, in the northwest part of the Indian subcontinent. And in addition to silver rupees, Ahmad Shah Durrani also struck copper phallus coins in Shah Jahanabad, which is today Old Delhi. And these coins have Persian inscriptions on the obverse and reverse. The obverse has the following inscription, Phallus Duri Durrani, which means phallus, pearl of pearls. And the reverse is the following inscriptions, which is Zab and then 1-4 Shah Jahanabad, which means struck in the 14th regnal year, which is 1759 AD in Shah Jahanabad. And this is one of the copper coins. And now we're going to look at the next kind of Mughal Empire that came to Mughal Emperor came to power after Muhammad Shah. Look at Ahmad Shah Bahadur. So he came to power after the death of his father, Muhammad Shah, in 1748. Upon his accession to the Mughal throne, he made Ghazi al-Din, who was the son of the Nizam of Hyderabad, his Mir Bakshi, and Saftajan, his Wazir. Nawab Javed Khan managed the entire Mughal Empire in Ahmad Shah's behalf. While Ahmad Shah devoted a lot of time in his harem, and this proved disastrous, as Ahmad Shah Durrani invaded India during his reign. And while this was going on, there was a power struggle at court. Saftajan, with the support of Iranian nobles, opposed Nawab Javed Khan and Muhammad Shah, who had the support of the Turkish nobility. And in 1752, Saftajan murdered Nawab Javed Khan, but he ultimately lost the power struggle and retreated to Awadh. And ultimately, Ghazi al-Din emerged victorious after the second power struggle with Saftajan's son, Shuja-ud-Dawla, and he was made Wazir. Ghazi al-Din then put Alamgir II on the throne and blinded Ahmad Shah Bahadur, thus ending his reign in 1754. And Ahmad Shah Bahadur would continue to live, however, until 1775 AD. Alamgir II acceded to the Mughal throne on the 2nd of June 1754. He was a puppet of Ghazi al-Din, but in reality, Ghazi al-Din was powerless. He couldn't raise money to pay off the Marathas, who were kind of plundering India, and they went on to plunder the suburbs of Delhi. And he was also unable to prevent the Jats from expanding their influence around Agra. And nor was he able to stop the Rohilla Pathans, who had increased their autonomy from the Mughal Empire after they created their own princely state in Rohilkhand in Uttar Pradesh, early in 1590. Their capital was Rampur, which has a famous library today, can still be visited. And Ghazi also attempted to raise money from the people of Delhi, but this led to unrest. And his own Turkic soldiers from Badakhshan in northern Afghanistan kind of attacked him because they hadn't been paid. And in 1756, he attempted to recover Lahore from the Afghans. and this led to disaster. And the Rohilla Pathans began negotiating with Ahmad Shah Durrani, and this contributed to the latter conquering Delhi. And he handed Delhi back to Alamgir II after taking away a lot of loot on 28,000 pack animals, along with 20 Mughal princesses, one of whom he intended to marry. And Ahmad Shah Durrani also looted Agra, Mathura, and Vrindavan in Uttar Pradesh. And on 29th November 1759, after this all happened, Ghazi al-Din had Alamgir II killed while he was visiting the Firozshah Kotla fort in Delhi. And Alamgir II was buried in Humayun's tomb in Delhi, and his tomb can still be seen there. And he was succeeded by his son, Shah Alam II. Shah Alam II acceded to the Mughal throne on 25th of December 1759. He faced an early challenge from a rival claimant to the Mughal throne, Shah Jahan III. Fortunately, Shah Jahan III was deposed by the Marathas in 1760. And Shah Alam II attempted to reassert Mughal authority in Bihar and Bengal, but the rise of the British East India Company halted these ambitions. The British had defeated the Mughals at the Battle of Plassey in 1757 in Bengal, and paid the Mughals 1,800 rupees a day in return for abandoning any claims over Bihar and Bengal. But despite this, Shah Alam II invaded Bihar in 1764 and was defeated decisively by Britain at Buxar in Bihar. And the Treaty of Allahabad in 1765 sealed the ascension of Britain as the major power of the Ganga plains. Britain gained control of the Diwani, or revenue control of Bihar, Bengal, and Odisha. And they reduced Shah Alam II to a pensioner with a stipend to live off. And this arrangement would continue under his successors. And Shah Alam II actually struggled to get back to Delhi from Allahabad, but he was able to do so after the Marathas were paid off to secure Delhi for him. And on the 6th of January 1772, Shah Alam II returned to Delhi. And on his return to Delhi, the Mughal court had become increasingly dominated by Mirza Najaf Khan, an Iranian noble. And Mirza Najaf Khan was able to defeat the Sikhs and Jats while defending Delhi against the Marathas. And he'd actually helped restore Mughal authority from the Sutlej River in Punjab to Agra, and from the Ganga to Jaipur. But after his death in 1782, the death of Mirza Najaf Khan, his lieutenants struggled for power in the Mughal court. This ended when the Maratha leader Mahaji Scindia ended this power struggle in exchange for tribute and the positions of commander-in-chief and regent. But unfortunately, Mahaji was unable to defeat the Rajputs at Lalsot, Rajasthan, in 1787, and this led to growing opposition to his influence at the Mughal court. And now enters one of the most notorious figures in the late Mughal period, Ghulam Qadir. Ghulam Qadir was the ruler of the Rohilla Pathans, and he was able to use the resentment against Marathas and the Mughal court to occupy Delhi from 18th of July to 2nd of October 1788. He was paid 1.2 million rupees and put Akbar Shah II on the Mughal throne after overthrowing Shah Alam II. Shah Alam II was blinded, and Ghulam looted goods worth 350 million rupees from the Mughals. But he wasn't very adept or able to hold on to the Mughal throne. And eventually food supplies ran out, and Ghulam had to retreat from Delhi. And Mahaji retook Delhi and restored Shah Alam II to the Mughal throne. And Mahaji pursued Ghulam Qadir and killed him and his followers. And the Marathas would continue to rule with Shah Alam II as a titular emperor until 1803, when the British under Jared Lake defeated the Marathas outside Delhi. And now Shah Alam II was now placed directly under British protection, and he would live in Delhi for the next 3 years until he died, and he was succeeded by Akbar Shah II. Akbar Shah II acceded to the Mughal throne as a titular ruler, just like his father, under the British East India Company. He only ruled over Delhi and was given a stipend of 90,000 rupees a month to live off. But court ceremonies and public processions continued as before. Akbar Shah II is credited with creating Phul Walon Kise at the Dargah of Qutb Sahib in Delhi. It is a tradition that still continues today and can be seen every year. And among the nobles at his court, which was centered in Delhi, was the father of Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan, the founder of Aligarh Muslim University. And under Akbar Shah II, Delhi grew to become an important trading center, and its population increased to 150,000. And there was also much patronage of Urdu poetry during this reign, which would continue under his son. And Akbar Shah II died in 1837 and was succeeded by his son, Bahadur Shah II. And Akbar Shah II minted silver coins, as before, his rupees, until the Delhi Mint was closed by the British East India Company in 1818. The Delhi mint workers were made redundant, and they wrote a letter to the British authorities about how other regional mints, such as in Rajasthan, continued, while their mint had been closed. Among the silver coiners struck were Nazrana rupees, with Persian inscription on the obverse and reverse. The obverse says, Sikhe Mubarak, Sahibi Kirani Sani, Muhammad Akbar Shah, Badshah Ghazi, which means this blessed coin, second lord of the conjunction, Muhammad Akbar King, warrior emperor. The reverse reads Sanat for Julus Zab Da'u Khilafat Shah Jahanabad, which means struck in the fourth regnal year 1811 in the abode of the Caliphate, Shah Jahanabad. And this is one of the silver Nazrana rupees, so you can see here, with a little parasol. And this is struck in Delhi, which is the kind of last remaining Mughal mint. And this is kind of what they look like. So this is the last coinage that was struck by the Mughals. And he also struck gold Mughals. And these coins follow the style of Mughals as established by Aurangzeb. His first gold coins were struck when he was acting Mughal emperor during the exile of his father, Shah Alam II. And these gold coins have inscriptions in Persian on the obverse and reverse. The obverse reads, Sikhe Zab da Jahan, Ba Fazl Illah, Hami Eddin, Muhammad Akbar Shah, which means struck coin in the world by the divine power, defender of the faith, Muhammad Akbar Shah. And the reverse reads, Sanat Ahad Jalus Memanat Manus, Zab Dalu Khilafat Shah Jahanabad, which means struck in the first regnal year in Shah Jahanabad, 1788. This is one of the gold Mughals. Now we're going to look at the last Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah II, famously remembered as Bahadur Shah Zafar. He acceded to the Mughal throne in 1837, and he's famous for his Urdu poetry, which he wrote under the pen name Zafar, which is why he's remembered as Bahadur Shah Zafar. The most famous Urdu poet of his reign was Mirza Ghalib, who's still remembered today. And Ghalib was at the Mughal court from 1847, and he began teaching poetry to Bahadur Shah in 1854. Thus, Bahadur Shah busied himself with poetry and court affairs, while Britain had emerged in India after dominant in India after the defeat of the Sikh Empire in 1849. And in 1854, with their position secure, Britain decided that after Bahadur Shah II died, his successor would be kind of downgraded to a prince rather than king, and the Mughal royal family was to be moved out of Delhi with a reduced allowance to live off. But before these plans could be enacted, in 1857, the East India Company sepoys rebelled against Britain in response to their policies in India, and it was triggered by rumours of beef and pork fat being used to grease the cartridges of their new Enfield muskets. And the sepoys occupied Delhi in May 1857 and proclaimed Bahadur Shah II as the emperor of the restored Mughal Empire. Bahadur Shah kind of reluctantly agreed and tried to kind of promote cooperation between Hindus and Muslims. And unfortunately, the sepoys were not very organized, and Britain were able to raise a new army, including Sikh and Pathan soldiers, and they then proceeded to conquer Delhi in September 1857. And Bahadur Shah's kind of reluctant endorsement of the sepoys would come back to haunt him as he be tried in India and exiled to Rangoon in Burma, now Myanmar, where he died in 1862. And thus, after 300 years, the Mughal Empire came to an end. And it's kind of a crucial junction point at 1857, the kind of before and after period of British rule as well. And that's a famous picture of Bahadur Shah II in 1858, waiting his trial by Britain in Delhi before his exile to Burma, Myanmar. Now we're going to look on to the kind of regional kingdoms that emerged in the wake of the decline of the Mughal Empire. So we're going to look at the Nawabs of Awadh, Bengal, and the Marathas. So we look at the Nawabs of Awadh. So the first Nawab of Awadh was Sadat Khan. He was a Shia Sayyid who migrated from Nishapur in Iran to India in late 1707 to serve the Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah I. His family had formerly served the Safavid dynasty, but they became impoverished, and as the Safavid Empire grew weak. And as a result, his family sought their fortune in India. And his family had actually migrated to India before him, and he joined them later in Patna in Bihar around 1708 to 1709 AD. And from there he then moved to Delhi. And in 1710 he became the Mir Manzil, or camp superintendent, in service of the Faujadar of Karamanipur in Uttar Pradesh, Sabalan Khan. And then Sadr Khan I then moved to Ahmedabad, where Sabalan Khan was also transferred. And 1730 he was made a Mansab of 1,000 horses, but he wasn't promoted after the death of his patron Muhammad Jafar. And his fortune would improve after his expedition against Jaipur in Rajasthan, and he was made a Faujadar of Hindaun and Bayana in Rajasthan in 1719. And while in Rajasthan, he crushed a rebellion and was further promoted by being given command of the 1,500 cavalrymen. And in the same year, he helped Muhammad Shah overthrow the Sayyid brothers and was rewarded with 3,000 cavalrymen and 5,000 sons. So quite a meteoric rise to power from poverty, must say. And in 1720, Sadr Khan was made governor of Akbarabad, which is now Agra in Uttar Pradesh. And he crushed the Jaipur in the region, but despite the success, he was dismissed as governor and had to return to Delhi, where he was made the first Nawab of Awadh in 1722. And as the first Nawab of Awadh, he sought to restore order, such as crushing the Sheikhzadas who had kind of grown quite powerful in Uttar Pradesh, and he gifted sunuds or gift grants to local zamindars who had assisted him. And he also reformed the administration of Awadh by ending the power of the Jagirdars. In 1739, Sadr Khan would face his greatest challenge when Nadir Shah invaded India. Sadr Khan I marched with an army to assist the Mughals at Karnal, but he wasn't trusted by Muhammad Shah because he was unsure whether he would fight his fellow Iranians. And it was only after swearing on the Quran he actually proved his loyalty, and he fought for the Mughals. But unfortunately, the Battle of Karnal went quite badly for the Mughals, and he was captured by an Iranian soldier from Nishapur who recognized him. And he was brought before Nadir Shah and was kind of told off for turning against his own countrymen, as he was of Iranian origin. But Sadr Khan was able to negotiate with Nadir Shah and went on to join the service. And Nadir Shah went on to sack Delhi, and Sadr Khan I would die on the 19th of March 1739 in Delhi. And he was succeeded by Safdarjung. Safdarjung was a descendant of the Turkic Karakoyunlu dynasty, which had ruled in Iran, northwest Iran in the 14th century, through his paternal line. And his mother was sister of Sadr Khan, which made him his nephew. Safdarjung was an able administrator under Muhammad Shah. In addition to Awadh, he was also made the governor of Kashmir. He became vizier under Muhammad Shah's successor, Ahmad Shah Bahadur, who made him governor of Ajmer in Rajasthan and Faujadar of Nanal in Haryana. Unfortunately, he would lose favour with the Mughal court and move back to Awadh, where he established his capital in Faizabad, which is near Lucknow, in Uttar Pradesh. And he died in 1754 and was succeeded by his son, Shuja-ud-Dawla. Shuja-ud-Dawla succeeded his father in 1753 and was recognized as Nawab of Awadh by Ahmad Shah Bahadur. His rival was Ghazi al-Din, who deposed Ahmad Shah Bahadur and put Alamgir II on the throne. Due to political pressure at the Mughal court, Alamgir II's son, Prince Ali Gohar, fled to Awadh and was welcomed by Shuja-ud-Dawla. And Prince Ali Gohar declared himself Mughal emperor and took the title of Shah Alam II. In 1761, Shuja helped Ahmad Shah Durrani defeat the Marathas at Panipat. And then 3 years later, Shuja fought alongside Shah Alam II against the British East India Company in Buxar, which was a defeat for the Mughals. And the Treaty of Allahabad, with Britain, led to Shuja-ud-Dawla ceding Kora and Allahabad districts in Uttar Pradesh to the British East India Company. And he also had to pay 5 million rupees to the British. And Britain were also to be allowed to trade freely in Awadh, and Shuja had to assist them in times of war. and he died in Faizabad in 1775, where he's buried in the Gulab Bari, which can still be seen today. And he was succeeded by his son, Asaf-ud-Dawla. Now we're going to look at Shuja-ud-Dawla's silver rupees. So Shuja-ud-Dawla ruled Awadh in the name of the Mughals as his predecessors had done. This is reflected in his silver rupees and continue under his immediate successors. The obverse and reverse are in Persian, and the obverse reads, Muhammadabad Memanat Manus Sama Zab Banaras, which means this coin was struck in Muhammadabad, which is one of the names of Varanasi at the time, in the 4th regnal year, which is 117 Hijri or 757 AD. The reverse reads Alamgir Badshah Ghazi Sikhe Mubarak, which means in the 117 Hijri, which means Alamgir II, warrior emperor, blessed coin, 1757 AD. And here's one of the coins struck in Varanasi by Shuja-ud-Dawla, the Nawab of Awadh, in 1757 AD. And now we're going to look at Asaf-ud-Dawla, who became the Nawab of Awadh in 1775. He came to power with help from the British East India Company, who helped him defeat his brother, Sadat Ali. The first threat he faced was from his own mother, Bahu Begum, who had control over the treasury and had her own private army. The British confiscated her jagirs and removed her as a threat to Asaf after a financial dispute between her and Warren Hastings. In recognition of the growing influence of Britain in Awadh, Asaf sought to appoint his own supporters to his court and British officers to command his army. And after a lifetime of political struggles, Asaf-ud-Dawla died in 1797, and he'd be buried in the Bara Imam Bara in Lucknow, and he was succeeded by Wazir Ali Khan. And Asaf-ud-Dawla is primarily remembered for shifting his capital from Awadh, in Awadh from Faizabad to Lucknow. And he's best remembered for building the Bara Imam Bara in Lucknow to provide work for his subjects during times of unemployment and famine. And he was also buried there after his death. He also built the Asfi Masjid, adjacent to the Bara Imam Bara. Both can be seen today in Lucknow, along with the famous Rumi Darwaza, which is now considered one of the symbols of Lucknow. And here's the interior of the Bara Imam Bara in Lucknow. Now we're going to look at his the successor of Asaf-ud-Dawla, Wazir Ali Khan, who became Nawab of Awadh in 1797. He was actually the adopted son of Asaf-ud-Dawla, and just like his predecessors, he came to power with support from Britain, and after just 4 months, they deposed him. And Wazir Ali Khan was exiled to Varanasi with a pension of 3 lakh rupees, and then in 1798, Britain installed Sadat Ali Khan II to replace him. And while in exile, Wazir Ali Khan attempted to regain power, but was defeated by Britain. And he fled to Azamgarh, then Butwal, and then Jaipur, where the Raja of Jaipur handed him over to Britain, who then imprisoned him in Fort William in Kolkata in West Bengal. And he spent the rest of his life there and died in 1817. And now Sadat Ali Khan was now undisputed Nawab of Awadh. Sadat Ali Khan II had been put in power in Lucknow by Britain, and half of Awadh's territories had to be ceded to Britain with a considerable loss of revenue. And these territories include Etawah, Farrukhabad, Azamgarh, Gorakhpur, Allahabad, also known as Prayagraj, B.H.U, Bareilly, Shahjahanpur, and Muradabad. And his army was also reduced to the size of 30,000 men. And in light of the situation, would look pretty hopeless for him. He instead just focused his mind on building projects in Lucknow. Among the building projects he had was the Kezabagh in Lucknow. And he passed away in 1814, and he was succeeded by Ghaziuddin Hyder Shah. Ghaziuddin Hyder Shah came to power on the 11th of July 1814. In 1816, he loaned 1 million rupees to Britain during the Anglo-Nepal War, and he was given territory from Nepal as compensation for this loan. In 1818, he formally declared himself Padshah-i Awadh, Emperor of Awadh, with the encouragement of the Marquess of Hastings in Fort William, Kolkata. This was done to counterbalance the prestige of the Mughal Emperor Akbar Shah II, but he was essentially a British puppet ruler and died in Lucknow in 1827, and he was succeeded by his son Nasiruddin Hyder Shah. And Ghaziuddin Hyder Shah is notable because he was the first time that Awadh was declared independent from the Mughal Empire. And to commemorate this, he minted silver rupees and gold ashrafis in his name, the latter resembling Mughal muhurs. Both his gold and silver coins have inscriptions in Persian on the obverse and reverse. The obverse depicts the other coat of arms with a crown flanked by lions and two fish. This fish symbol can still be seen in Lucknow today. The obverse is the following inscription: Da'ul Sultanat Lucknow, Jalus Memanat Manus 6, Zab Subi Abad, abode of the Sultanate Lucknow, minted in the 6th regnal year, which is 1824 AD, struck in the province of Abad. And the reverse has the following inscription: Az Fazl Rabdul Zulmanan, Ghazi Uddin Haidar Ali Nasr Shah Zaman Zadba Sim Veza, and in 1240 Hijri. By the excellence of God and benefactor of the Son, Ghazi Uddin Haidar Ali, King of Time, struck in 1824 AD. And this is one of the silver rupees of Ghazi Uddin Haidar Shah, struck in Lucknow in 1824 AD. And here's a gold Ashrafi of Ghazi Uddin Haidar Shah, struck in 1825 AD. You can see the coat of arms on both. And now we look at Naziruddin Haidar Shah. Naziruddin Haidar Shah succeeded his father as the Nawab of Awadh in 1827. And he was more interested in his harem, astronomy, and astrology rather than ruling. And as a result, his life was relatively uneventful. And he was assassinated by nobles in 1837. And he had no designated successor, and this led to a brief kind of struggle for power between his family members until Britain intervened and put Muhammad Ali Shah on the throne, who succeeded him. And as with his predecessors, Muhammad Ali Shah ruled as a puppet of Britain, and they ran courtly affairs for him at this point. And Britain imprisoned any challenges to his rule in Chuna, Mirzapur district in Uttar Pradesh. And Muhammad Ali Shah was a Shia Muslim like his predecessors, and it's for this reason that Lucknow remains the center of Shia Islam in India to this day. He was a patron of Shia holy sites in Kabbalah in Iraq, and sent money for the upkeep of religious sites in present-day Iraq. And he died in 1842, Amjad Ali Shah. And Amjad Ali Shah came to power on 7th of May 1842. And he is primarily remembered for building projects. So he undertook a number of building projects in Uttar Pradesh. He built a road, built a bridge over the Gomti River, and built a road from Kanpur to Lucknow. He also built the famous Hazragan and Aminabad bazaars in Lucknow, which are popular to this day. And he died after 5 years in 1847 and was succeeded by Wajid Ali Shah. And Amjad Ali Shah struck silver rupees in his own name with inscriptions in Persian on the obverse and reverse. The obverse reads, Da Jahan Zad Sikhe Shahi Bene Illa Zilehak Amjad Ali Shah Zaman Alam Pane, which means Amjad Ali, King of the Universe, Refuge of the World, Shade of God, struck this road coin. And reverse has a fish, the royal symbol of the Nawab of Awadh, with a parasol above it. And it has the following inscription: Sanat Zab Mulk Awadh Beit al-Sultanat Lucknow, Jalus Nimanat, which means this coin was struck in the 2nd regnal year, which is 1259 Hijri in 1842 AD, in Lucknow, in the kingdom of Awadh. And here's the coin. You can see here 1259 the Hijri year, and then the royal kind of symbol of Awadh here. And now looking at Wajid Ali Shah, the last Nawab of Awadh, who ruled as king. He came to the throne in 1847. By this stage, Awadh was impoverished and his army was controlled by Britain. Wajid Ali Shah was a patron of the arts, including music and theatre, which he's famous for. And he's also remembered as a patron of Kathak, which is now a world-famous form of Indian dance. He was a capable administrator, but he's remembered today for his kind of debauchery in the harem. And Britain used this Awadh's bankruptcy and Wajid's supposed debauchery to annex Awadh in what was known as the Doctrine of Lapse. And Awadh was formally annexed by Britain in 1852 under Lord Dalhousie, the Governor-General of British India, and Wajid Ali Shah was exiled to Kolkata, where he died in 1887. And his coinage, just like his predecessors, were silver rupees and gold ashrafis. Both these coin types have Persian inscriptions on the obverse and reverse. The obverse reads, Sikke Zad Basim Va Za'az Fazl Tayyid Illah Zile Haq Wajid Ali Sultan Alam Badshah, and then 1263 Hijri, which means this coin was struck and corroborated by God, shadow of the truth, Wajid Ali, Sultan of the World, Emperor, 1846 AD. The reverse depicts the Nawab Awad's coat of arms and has the following inscriptions: Julus Limanat Manus Yek, Zab Da al Sultanat, Lucknow Mulk Awad Sanat, which means in the first regnal year, struck in the abode of the Sultanate, Lucknow, Kingdom of Awadh. And here's the gold Ashrafi of Wajid Ali Shah, struck in Lucknow. And here's the rupee struck in Lucknow as well, of Wajid Ali Shah. And now we're going to look at the end of the Nawabs of Awadh. So during the 1857 war, Wajid Ali Shah's son, Burgess Qadr, was made Nawab of Awadh once again, with his mother, Begum Hazrat Mahal, acting as regent. And then Bahadur Shah II in Delhi confirmed the regency of Hazrat Mahal. And the most notable event during this period was the famous siege of the British residency in Lucknow, which didn't end well for the besiegers, because the British forces were able to relieve the defenders in November 1857. By 1858, the last of the sepoys had been crushed by Britain, and this forced Hazrat Mahal and Burgess Qadr to flee to Nepal, where he resided until 1893. After the death of Wajid Ali Shah, Burgess went to Kolkata, where he was reportedly poisoned and died. And with this, the Nawabs of Awadh came to an end. And now we're going to look at Bengal. So let's see where Kolkata is. So we can look at the Nawabs of Bengal. The first Nawab of Bengal was Murshid Quli Khan, who had formerly been Wazir under the Mughal Emperor Farrukh Shah. He'd also been Diwan of Bengal under Aurangzeb and had escaped an assassination attempt by Prince Azeem in Jahangirnagar, which is now Dhaka. Subsequently, he felt unsafe in Jahangirnagar and moved to Murshidabad, which he renamed Murshidabad in 1704 AD. He became the Nawab of Bengal under the Mughal Emperor Jahandar Shah and formally declared Murshidabad to be his capital. He reformed the Jagirdari system and instead implemented the Mal Jasmani system. And the revenue system at this time comprised security bonds and ijadas who collected land revenue, and they would later be known as zamindars and become very influential in Bengal. Murshid Quli Khan died in 1727 and was succeeded by his son-in-law Shuja-ud-Din Muhammad Khan. Shuja-ud-Din Muhammad Khan was an Afshar Turk whose ancestors had served the Safavids in Farah in Khorasan, which is now in modern-day Afghanistan. He'd been the Subadar of Odisha with Ali Wadi Khan and his naib, or deputy, who then supported him in taking power. The Mughal Emperor Muhammad Shah also supported his claim, and he overthrew his grandson Sarfaraz Khan, who'd been designated as successor by Murshid Quli Khan. He was Shuja-ud-Din was an able administrator, and the banking family of Jagat Seth grew influential and helped Bengal prosper. And Shuja-ud-Din's reign saw the first clashes with the British East India Company, and he forced them to make peace with an indemnity of 3 lakh rupees to be paid to him. He died in 1739 and was succeeded by his son Sarfaraz Khan. Sarfaraz Khan came to power in 1739. He was uninterested in government affairs, but was very religious, and he left the running of the government to the Nazim of Azimabad, which is now Patna, Ali Fatih Khan. Thus his reign would be short-lived, and he faced a rebellion from Ali Fatih Khan in 1740. Both the armies of Sarfaraz and Ali Wadi clashed at Giri in West Bengal, where Sarfaraz was killed. Ali Fatih Khan succeeded him as Nawab in 1740. Ali Wadi Khan came to power, and his rule was recognized by the Mughal Emperor Muhammad Shah. He was a cousin of Shuja-ud-Din Muhammad Khan. The main threat to his reign came from the Marathas, who were raiding Bengal. In 1747, Rajoji I, Bhonsle, invaded Bengal and pillaged the region. Ali Wadi was able to rout the Marathas at the Battle of Burdwan in West Bengal, and in the midst of this turmoil, Ali Wadi Khan had to crush a rebellion by his own son-in-law, Siraj-ud-Dawla. Unfortunately, Odisha was also had to be ceded to the Marathas on the orders of Shah Bahadur, but this didn't stop their raids until a peace treaty was signed. And Ali Wadi Khan was not just a military commander, but also a patron of music and literature. And his reign would continue until 1756 when he died, and he was succeeded by Siraj-ud-Dawla. Siraj-ud-Dawla came to power in 1756, and his power is inexorably linked with the betrayal of his treacherous commander, Mir Jafar. Early on in his reign, he consolidated his rule, but he faced a growing threat of the British East India Company, who were based in Fort William in Kolkata. In response to this, Siraj captured Kolkata, which was briefly named Aligarh, as well as Fort William. He held British prisoners in the infamous Black Hole of Calcutta, where many of the prisoners died. And this was used by pretext by Robert Clive to clash with Siraj at the Battle of Plassey in 1757, where Siraj-ud-Dawla was defeated. And Mir Jafar had secretly conspired with the British, and because of this, even today he's remembered as he's synonymous with betrayal and treason. And Siraj-ud-Dawla was executed after having been taken prisoner by Britain in 1757. And Mir Jafar realized the ambitions of Britain and tried to gain support from the Dutch in overthrowing them, but this failed in 1759 after Britain was defeated. Britain defeated the Dutch at the Battle of Chinsura. And Mir Jafar was replaced by Mir Qasim, who attempted to expel the British from Bengal by allying with the Mughals and the Nawab over the Battle of Buxar. But this failed, and Mir Qasim and he was succeeded by Mir Jafar's son, Najmuddin Ali Khan. And he came to power with the support of the British and had to pay £140,000 to them, which left him essentially powerless. And he would die in 1766 and be succeeded by his son, Saif-ud-Dawla. And as Nawab of Bengal, Saif also had little power, and his position was confirmed by Shah Alam II. And he died during a smallpox epidemic in Murshidabad in 1770. And Najmuddin Ali Khan was succeeded by his brother Najabat Ali Khan in 1766. And Najabat signed a treaty with Britain, where he received just over 41 lakh rupees as a stipend to live off. And although his position as Nawab of Bengal was confirmed by Shah Alam II, he was essentially powerless, as the British East India Company held power. In 1770, there was the Bengal famine, where millions of people died, or migrated out of Bengal to other regions in India. Najabat died from smallpox in 1770, and he was succeeded by Ashraf Ali Khan, who reigned for just 2 weeks until he died also from smallpox. And he in turn was succeeded by Mubarak Ali Khan. Mubarak Ali Khan and his successors were rulers figureheads of Britain. They attempted to institute policies such as over monetary issues, but it was Britain who held real power. The last Nawab of Bengal, Mansur Ali Khan, was forced to abdicate in 1880, and his title was abolished. And thus the Nawabs of Bengal formally came to an end. And the coins of the Nawabs of Bengal were struck in the name of the Mughal Emperor initially, and this is reflected in their coinage, which is scarce, as Britain was granted the power to mint coins in Bengal after the Battle of Plassey in 1757. Mir Jafar struck silver rupees in the name of the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan III. His rupees have the inscriptions in Persian on the obverse and reverse. The obverse says Sikhe Mubarak Shah Jahan Bacha Ghazi, which means this blessed coin struck in the name of Shah Jahan III, warrior emperor. The reverse says Sanat Ad Jalus Memanat Manus Zab Azimabad, which means struck in the first round of the year, which is around 1759 to 1760 AD, in Azimabad, which is now Patna in Bihar. And this is the rupee of Mir Jafar, struck in Azimabad. I realize running short on time here, but I'm going to quickly go through the Marathas and then finish. The Maratha Empire was founded in 1674 by Shivaji, who was from the Bhosle clan. He fought against the Sultanate of B.H.U in the Deccan before clashing with the Mughals. He was able to successfully elude Aurangzeb's armies. In 1681, he was succeeded by Shambhaji, who was later captured by and executed by Aurangzeb in 1689. But this wouldn't stop the Marathas, and his half-brother Rajaram succeeded him and continued to raid Mughal territory. Rajaram would rule until his death in 1700, and his widow Tarabai would rule afterwards. After Aurangzeb's death in 1707, Bahadur Shah I attempted to stoke dissension among the Marathas by releasing Shahchuji, the son of Shambhaji. This led to a civil war among the Marathas, as well as a continuation of war with the Mughals. And in the midst of this, Shahchuji appointed Balaji Vishwanath as Peshawar. And now it will be the Peshawars who would hold real power in the Maratha Empire. And the Marathas would wage war in Bengal and Gujarat from their bases in Dar, Indore, and Gwalior. And in 1720, a new Peshawar came to power, Baji Rao I. And he famously defeated the Nizam of Hyderabad in 1728 in Nashik, Maharashtra, and raided Delhi in 1737. He also checked the power of the Portuguese in Vasai, near Mumbai in Maharashtra, and he was succeeded by his son, Balaji Bajirao. Balaji Bajirao led the Maratha armies to victory against the Nawab of Arcot in Tamil Nadu. However, it was Rahujuji Bhonsle who launched 6 raids into Bengal from 1741 to 1748, and he was able to annex Odisha. And after these successful raids, the Marathas turned to northwest India, where they looted Delhi and advanced as far as Peshawar in 1758. In 1760, these gains were reversed with the victory of Amir Shah Durrani against the Marathas at the Battle of Panipat. It wasn't until the rise of Peshwa Madhavrao I that the Maratha Empire would regain its strength. He waged war against Hyder Ali I of Mysore, who was the father of Tipu Sultan, while also forming an alliance with the Nizam of Hyderabad, and he encountered the rising power of Britain. Thus, he was the last effective ruler of the Maratha Empire. And after his death in 1772, the Maratha Empire went in its steep decline, and they waged war against Mysore, which was now ruled by Tipu Sultan. In 1799, the Marathas helped Britain to defeat Tipu Sultan during the Anglo-Mysore Wars. And after Tipu Sultan was defeated, Britain turned their attention to the Maratha Empire. And Britain defeated the Marathas at the Battle of Delhi in 1806. And by 1818, the Maratha Empire came to an end after the Treaty of Gwalior the previous year. And Shivaji, looking at the Maratha coinage, so Shivaji's coinage included these copper pieces known as Shivrais. These coins have Devanagari script on the obverse and reverse. The obverse reads Shri Raja Shiv, which means Lord King Shivaji. And the reverse reads Chhatrapati, or King. And here's one of the copper Shivrai pesos of Shivaji, struck between 1674 and 1680 AD. No mint is given. And the Marathas also struck silver rupees, and such as these. And these were struck in the name of the Mughal emperor. And the coins had Persian scripts on the obverse and reverse. So you had a Maratha Hindu king striking coins in the name of the Mughals, their great adversary. And one such example of these rupees cited Shah Alam II as sovereign. And the reverse reads Sikhe Mubarak Shah Alam II Badshah Ghazi, which means this blessed coin struck in the name of Shah Alam II, warrior emperor. And the reverse reads Sanat Julus Zab Chandor, which means struck in Chandor, which is now Chandwa in Nashik district in Maharashtra. And here's one of the rupees, very similar to Mughal rupees struck at the time, so very much following the type. You see Shah Alam here. And the Marathas also struck pesos. These were struck in copper, and these copper coins also cited the Mughal emperor and had inscription in Persian on the obverse and reverse. The obverse reads Shah Alam Badshah Ghazi, which means Shah Alam II, warrior emperor. And the reverse has the mint of the flag, but also the following inscription, Sanat Julus, which gives simply the regnal year. And here is one of the copper pesos of the Maratha Empire, citing the Mughals, struck between 1716 and 1806 AD, with no mint given. And on that note, I finish my talk.
Yes, it was a grand lecture.
Yes.
From the very beginning to the end, it was something like a all engrossing. And personally, I should say, I was just hearing you and imagining what was the period and time. So you narrated the history and also the coinage. Now, Professor Pundhir sir is here, and we would love to hear him about the history and the coinage system and whatever he wishes to say. Please, sir, come up with your observations and presidential remarks.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. No doubt, it's a very good survey. You know, Dr. Azeem Ali, 18th century is a century of crisis. And you know, in this century, especially after the death of Aurangzeb, the whole coinage system, whole monetary system of the Mughals started to decline. And for the successor states and for later on for the Britishers, these Mughal coins are having a only value of billions. Value of billions, even for the Marathas. You know, it's a great crisis emerges in the monetization of the economy. And you know very well, Mughals, they introduced a great monetization in the economy. But now the monetization is in danger. And even the successor state of the Mughals, they don't follow the same criteria, parameters, which was adopted by earlier by great Mughals. Now the weight, shape, and there you can say the currency started to debase, and there is no exchange value among the successor.
Professor Manvedra?
Mint and the coinage is totally changed. And now at the regional level, so many agencies came up, like Jagat Seth in Bengal, and even in Awadh, the Nawabs, they were having their own parameters to mint the coins. But this deterioration has not been stopped right now. And this deterioration was further intensified by the British East India Company. British East India Company has no concern with the Mughals copper coins. They know only the gold coins of the Mughals and silver, because each coins are having a value of the bullions, gold and silver. First thing. Second, with this political disintegration and with this coming of the European powers, the Mughal coinage system, it started to deteriorate. But this type of the deterioration further intensified the drain of wealth as done by the British East India Company. Clear? I'm having one query. This century is divided into 2 or 3, you can say, ideological interpretations. One set of the historians says it's a century of the decline. Of course, Aligarh school propounded this theory. But other school says it's a century of the political decentralization, but it's a continuity of the economy. Dr. Azeem, I invite your perception. You have gone through this coinage system. You have also narrated the different shape, different type of the coins issued by the successor states, later on by the Marathas, and ultimately the Britishers. May I know, this coinage system, as you studied, as you presented, supported the decline theory or supported the theory of continuity as propounded by the C.A. Valley? It's a very small query. Okay, let this. And now by adopting economic parameters, by studying these currency system during the 18th and first half of the 19th century, we cannot assess the economy of the India. If there is a price rise, even in Jaipur, after the death of Aurangzeb, there is a price rise. Price rise generally considered as a flourishing of the economy. But do you know, when the Marathas, they have taken away the tribute, they extracted tribute from the Rajputana states, then there is a scarcity of the metallic currency in Jaipur. The scarcity of the metallic currency in Jaipur induced the rise in prices. This is a false rise in prices, because in circulation the money became short, coin became short, then it induced the price rise. And now, this type of the things emerges in not a uniform type of the emergence, but in some region, because of the lack of metallic currency, there is a rise. In other region, the monetization get affected, and some sort of the at the local level, localization of the economy took place, just because of the lack of the coinage, lack of the uniform coinage. So I invite your perception, and I would like to conclude it by inviting your perception. Whatever you have studied during the 18th and 19th century, you support the continuity theory or decline theory?
So, yes, so actually, I actually kind of have my answer kind of integrates both approaches, in a sense that as I described, the later Mughals were kind of not very interested in ruling. Like, they were more interested in the harem and music, so they delegated authority to their ministers. So definitely there's a decline going on. But as I described before with the Delhi Sultanate, as it grew weak, you kind of had, again, a kind of reorganization of currency and economies in India. But I would say, and the fact that a lot of the succession states actually continued the practice of striking silver coins in exactly the same style as the Mughals had done. So if you compare a silver rupee of Shah Alam II with a silver rupee of struck in Delhi, they both cite, these coins both cite the Mughal emperor. So this is a coin struck in Delhi, and this is a coin of the Marathas. So they both kind of continue to strike the name of the Mughal emperor, and that means that the Mughal emperor, despite losing much effective power, had this kind of symbolic resonance across India. So I would say it was kind of a combination. So the fact that the Marathas, in the late Maratha period, they actually were protectors of the Mughal emperor. They actually protected the Mughal emperor despite being enemies. They're actually saying, we're going to protect you. So I would say that this kind of point supports the idea that the way of conveying the prestige of the Mughal emperor, they had this kind of awe around them, like the kind of prestige. So people still wanted to say that we oppose you, but we still recognize that you're the emperor of India. And obviously, when the 1857 war happened, this was very clear where, all the disparate groups, you look to Bahadur Shah Zafar saying, you're emperor, you're
sir. Meaning why you supported
mainly the decline, but also the regionalization that was going on, but people still look.
You are correct. Your study also indicates one thing. Nawab of Awadh, they struck the silver coin. And once these silver coin migrated to in the Nawabi of Bengal, it became a bullion. You followed my point?
Yes, I did.
Coin struck by the Nawab of Awadh is not having a universally recognized as a coin. They became bullion. Marathas, they extracted once Jaipur ruler attempted to give the tribute in copper coins. They refused. Maratha refused to take. They want either silver coins or gold coins. Some sort of the decline. I don't know. When you studied, you presented a very good survey of the coins. And if I have already gone through your survey, then I found the decline theory is really very good. And it's having you can say, standing. And I don't know why the localization of the economy is termed by the CA Valley as a continuity theory. Whenever I talk about the points, no doubt, nice lecture, and I congratulate you. You attempted a very rare aspects of the Mughal economy.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Azeem Ali.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, sir, for the presidential remarks. I have been teaching 18th century as a student of economic history. I teach modern or economic history during colonial period. I find that at regional levels, particularly if I take the example of Varanasi, there is a book written by that is a PhD work of Professor K. P. Mishra of Gorakhpur University. Now is known Varanasi in Transition. The book is titled, and it is from 1739 to 1782. And he, in a very detailed manner, discusses every aspect of the economy. And as per his study, Varanasi was flourishing, and the Jagat Seth, who is supposed to be there in Calcutta, having linkage with Varanasi Seth, like Kashmiri Mal of Varanasi. This is one thing I would like to say. And the other things, like the emergence of paper currency. Paper currency to the denomination of 10,000 rupees. The presidential banks emerged, which were the banks under the control of East India Company, the Calcutta Presidency Bank and the Bombay and Madras Presidency Banks. Why such large denomination of currency emerges? This shows that there were certain large transactions taking place. And apart from that, the the commercialization of agriculture, which was there during the Mughal period also, but the Britishers, arrival of the Britishers and the East India Company, that facilitated or given a fillip to the commercialization of agriculture and subsequently monetization of the Indian rural area. That monetization led to something like proliferation of the economic conditions of certain sections of the Indian society, the bankers and those who were related with them. There took place pauperization of the traditional feudals, the Jagirdars, the Zamindars. New Zamindars came into existence and new urban centers emerged all over India, if I may like to say. So, as one historian of South India is perhaps Sanjay Subramaniam. Sanjay Subramaniam had studied the South India from the perspective of the arrival of the Portuguese in South India. And he, if I am not incorrect, he traces something like rise of economy in South India with the more and more contact with the foreign countries. This is not to deny that there was less contact of foreign countries during Mughal period of business. We see so much business flourishing in Mughal period, and economy was so flourishing that even Professor Irfan Habib in 1963 had to write something like this: propensities of capitalist development in Mughal India. But his view was that Mughal India was developing on the path which had to naturally lead to what happened in Meiji, Japan, or what happened even in England in the form of commercialization and the rise of the commercial classes. But because of the coming of the colonialism, the natural growth of capitalism was lived into bud. That is what Irfan Habib has to say. But the point is that we see that there was deindustrialization. There is a concept called deindustrialization. They say that from 1813 onwards, with the renewal of the charter, the end of the monopoly of East India Company, we have more and more flooding of India that results in deindustrialization. And that deindustrialization has been mentioned by even William Bentinck, who says that the rural India was breached by the bones of the beavers. Yes, the beavers. So, this is something like an image which you can say that something in the form of a colonialism was emerging in India, and 18th century can be considered as a century which led to colonialism, and colonialism is a contrast economy in comparison with other economies like Mughal and Sultanate, because those rulers, they extracted revenue from India and they spent revenue here in India. But the British were the first rulers who extracted revenue from here and they spent it in London, in England, and that was something like several historians, they say that the industrialization or the industrial revolution, which started in 1790 onwards in England, which led England to just establish its imperialism all over the world, that facilitated, that route of Bengal facilitated something like imperialism, economic imperialism of Britain. So, leaving apart all these things, if someone has only to pinpointedly say, what is the economy of India? Was it developing or was it in decline? Then one will have to be very cautious to say that there are certain things which one may say that a transition was taking place. It was a decline for those who were the traditional rulers, the traditional Zamindars, traditional Jagirdars. But the traditional Zamindars and Jagirdars who converted to something like bourgeois tendencies, who entered into some business activity, they flourished, and that is what the scenario emerges. But it is a fact that 18th century is a century of beginning of colonial economy in India. So, thanks.
I must say something. what is the extent of the after the you can say the Nadir Shah's attack. Battle of Plassey took place in 1757. From 1757 till the 1818. In 1818, British East India Company emerged and they adopted the British paramountcy. This period is very crucial. And the issuing the note of 10,000 further indicated now there is a channelization of the wealth of India in one or two directions. Demonetization of the economy always indicated by the issuing the note or coin of high denomination. And when the economy is lacking small coins of the small denomination, it means the economy is getting very fast. You can say demonetized, or the economy started to emerge such type of the system by which a particular sort of the win of wealth took place. And if I invite your attention, sir, British East India Company from 1757 in all the presidencies, only those areas got developed where the you can say traders of the East India Company or freebooters, they carry their business. And they never invited Indian, still after I think the Maratha Empire was there, very much there. It was totally crushed by 1818. Before that, the British East India Company never took the coin and never considered the coins of the regional powers in the terms of the coins. They demanded gold coins because the gold is a bullion. Silver coins, it again you can say the bullion. Now, if you go through the one very important work on the Bengal, province of Bengal by Sushil Chaudhary and others, Armenian traders, they are doing more business in the comparison of the European traders. And Europeans now in this phase, they are facing a trouble. They are devising, they are introducing such type of the methods by which they can take away Indian wealth with a greater proportion. So, sir, this 18th century is really having a lot of intricacies. And I have studied the Jaipur. And Jaipur, after the decline of the Mughals, Jaipur seems to be growing very fast. But when we study inside, I found a different sort of the thing. You can say the fake growing emerges there. Once the Savai Jai Singh was died, immediately the whole state got disintegrated politically, economically, socially, and on all aspects. And in agriculture, India was at that time was also an agriculture country. In agriculture, Inam and farming of the agriculture took place. Farming of the revenue took place on a large scale. And sir, you know very well, in the permanent settlements, the number of the old Jamidars, they got crushed under the sunset law. The 18th century really still needs more work from the economic parameters, and it needs, you can say, broad outlook to study the 18th century. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I thank Dr. Azeem Ali for enlightening us and provoking us to think again and again about the scenario, the economic scenario. It was a reason that monetization took place in Mughal period to such an extent that one Angus Madison, who had written a statistical statement about the economies of the world from 1st century AD to 2030 AD. He had something like a forecast, he did a forecast about the economy of the world in 2030. And he writes about the beginning of 18th century as India constituting world's largest economy. India and China, they combine, they produce in terms of GDP more than 60% of the world economy. So India was at the top of the economic condition in a general way, one may say, and how this colonization that depleted, if someone may say like that, depleted the economy to the extent that when we reached 1947, we find that we were not in a position to feed our population. That was something like 39 crores. And now we are in a position to feed 135 crores. And surplus grain is there in India because of the Green Revolution and things like that. So, thank you, sir, very much. And thanks, Professor Pundhir, sir. And thanks all the audience, honorable audience, teachers, who just remained there to enjoy the lecture of Professor Ali and Professor Pundhir, sir. And now I ask our computer expert.
I just wanted to say something. Yes. One more thing to add. When Professor Pundhir and Aligarh talking about demonetization, I can't help but remember. I was in India when it happened, 2016. When the notes were changed. Like just thinking about just the contemporary aspect, how chaotic it was. With the change of notes. Like, one kind of imagine how must have felt like in those times when notes changed and people were kind of panicking going to banks. It kind of reminds you how important denominations are. Because I just couldn't help but remember that, just to give a contemporary aspect of how it did create chaos. Regardless of your position on it, it's interesting comparison to be made.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sir.
So, sir, you have to say, Professor Pundhir, sir?
Yes. I failed to follow what you want to ask. Dr. Azeem,
Professor Azeem Ali, what you wanted to say, please underline what you wanted to emphasize.
Because of the change, because of the fluctuation in network, some words I have missed.
Oh, basically, I compared. I just said that in India in 2016 you had this demonetization of the currency, and I thought it was interesting the kind of comparison with the earlier. What had happened with
Azeem sir, in this whole context, I cited one thing very important. I rather emphasize one thing very important. India is an agricultural country.
Yeah.
And agriculture is having a great observing capacity. When Nadir Shah attacked India and he thoroughly looted the Delhi, he has taken away almost all of the wealth of Delhi, Mughal Empire and this and that. And to your surprise, in the northern India, as per one, you can say, assessment, we don't have any capital. But to your surprise, the monsoon was very good in that year, and then the agriculture was so good that within 6 months, whatever deficiency Indians had, now it's all made up. It's all made up. The Mughal Empire lost a lot of wealth to the Nadir Shah. Within 1 year, they regained their wealth through this agriculture. And demonetization, present demonetization, and the demonetization of that time is totally different, because this monetization is a man-made, and that monetization is developed because developed because of the decentralization, because of the weakness of the power.
So it's just interesting.
There is a lot of similar point, lot of departing points, but we cannot base the history on speculation.
Of course, I understand. Yeah.
Sometime off the camera, then we will discuss about it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So, thanks all. And now I invite Alok ji, our computer expert, to come to express thanks and express his ideas.
First of all, thank you so much, Mr. Dr. Azeem Ali sir, for giving his valuable time in this 28 August. And special thanks also Mr. Professor Pundhir sir and our coordinator sir, Rakesh Pandey sir. And thanks for the all the audience for giving his valuable time and this wonderful lecture. And thank you so much, sir. And we will always hear again and again. Your words are very meaningful, and your lecture and session was very marvelous. That's the things the audience will connected all the time. So much, sir. Thank you so much.
So thanks all, and we look forward to the lecture of Professor Pundhir on the architecture of medieval India